A very good morning to you. It is April 16. Just over 2 more weeks to go to payday. So I trust that you are excited this morning to be part of the family of God. You may be off to a slow start, but if you've joined us, you are on the fifth connection. And we continue right along this morning because we are talking about stick to itiveness. What's the stickiness that believers need in their lives? They need to stick with faith. They need to keep on believing. Only trust Him, only trust Him, only trust Him now. He will save you. He will save you. He will save you now. But as we continue on this road, it's a faith walk. Not a faith walk, a faith walk. And life has a way of kindling our faith unless we have become totally oblivious to how God is operating in His world, His purposes to perform. It's about belief, you see. Not about black ink on white paper, about the 20, 30, 40, or 100 things I believe. It's my continuity of contact with the God of heaven because He's the one for whom I ultimately care. That's what faith is about, ultimate care. Caring about Him, how He's brought me out of darkness into light and continues to nurture me in terms of walking in that light. We are looking at the honor roll of faith in Hebrews chapter 11. And often this section is just misread in more ways than one because faith is a theme, belief is a theme. The confession of our faith is a theme that runs all the way from chapter 1, all the way through the 13 chapters, the 303 verses. Because the writer is challenging the Christian Hebrews not to drop their guard, not to let go of faith and go back to the old ways, not to go back to the flesh pots of Egypt, as it were, not go back to the old covenant, because there is a better way. And he speaks of the better things. How Christ is better than angels, better than Torah, better than Moses. So these better than statements are peppered across the 13 chapters. But not only are there 5 warnings that alert these Christian Hebrews of the danger of defection and what that holds in for them if they defect. The consequences are dire, they are great, they are absolutely devastating. Because you see, there is a punishment worse than death. You have to wait until we get into more the end chapters of Hebrews for that one. But to understand that in the faith chapter, as it were, the writer is cataloging a faith that's worth following. There are those who have gone before and who had suffered immensely, a lot more than we would ever. In our resisting against sin, we have not resisted unto blood. We've not given our lives, at least not yet. But many of these believers who are named in the chapter are those who experienced the deliverance of God. So from verse number 32, the writer moves from the very specific exemplary category of those who trusted God to almost a rapid fire, a rapid cataloging of triumphs of faith. Because he mentions name after name after name without giving any long expressions. He's tracking people from the time of the judges through to the time of the kings in verse 32. He says, "And what more shall I say? For time will fail me to tell you of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women, in turn, received back their dead by resurrection. Now, here's where he makes the shift, because what he talks about in 32 to 34 uh, would he be naming those who were delivered because of their continuity of contact. Their confidence was in God. Because 5 times in the text of the story, Christian Hebrews are challenged not to drop their guard, not to throw away their confession of faith, but to hold on to it with boldness. And so in 32 to 35a, he names those who were delivered. Now he switches because he's going to go from the name brands to the no name brands. You ever gotten into the store and you're looking for your brand and you discover that your branded products are a lot more expensive? I wonder if it just has to do with the color of the label or the shape of the tin. That we kind of steer away from no name brands. You say that's inferior quality, maybe cheaper, still the same thing. So now he's going to go to those no named ones, the nameless ones, and who are undelivered still because of their faith. 35. Women received back their dead from resurrection. Some were tortured, refusing to accept release so that they might rise again to a better life. Now that's some. Versus others in 36. Others suffered mocking and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were inebriated. They were stoned with stones. They were sawn asunder, sawn in two. They were killed with the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, afflicted, mistreated. Now watch what the text says in 38. Of whom? Of them that were just mentioned. The no names, the nameless ones, of whom the world was not worthy. Just think about that. Of whom the world was not worthy. We often talk about somebody who passes and we say they were too good for this world. What do we mean by that? Well, that's very similar to what the writer is saying here. The world was not worthy of them because they trusted God. They wandered about in deserts and mountains. The text goes on, in dens and caves of the earth. Just think of that. None of us are there yet. We're living in dire times in our own land. So many things are changing so fast. We're not even talking about AI now. Not even talking about the digital world and the techno world. We're just talking about politically how this landscape is shifting monumentally. And how we move from a people who experienced great freedom in 1994, and we sit here in 2025 with great doubts. But the writer mentions the name brands, and then he goes into the no-name brands. And these are unnamed. These were the ones who were not delivered from hardship, but got crushed between the millstones of persecution and torture and mocking and flogging and the like. And the writer draws a conclusion in verse 39 and 40. He pulls all of what he's talking about from verse 1 to 38. He draws it together. And watch what he says. All these The name brands together with the no name brands, those who were delivered and those who were not delivered. All these, though approved or commended through their faith. That was the singular commendation of them. Their faith, their stick to itiveness. They still believed God in spite of. They did not receive what was promised. Oh, what a downer. They did not receive what was promised. Verse 40, since God had provided something better. Now, what could be better than not receiving what was promised? Well, the future inheritance, a future reward. Since God had provided something better for us, which would be the Hebrew Christians, or rather the Christian Hebrews, that apart from us, the Christian Hebrews, right? That's the reference or the antecedent of us, the believers of the day, that apart from us, they should not be made perfect. So those who've gone before have to wait until we drop, until we step across the threshold out of time into eternity. And then they will experience the ultimate salvation that God has promised. Isn't that something? They have to wait. So we are greatly privileged as believers in this day and age because they will have to wait. Because we are waiting for something better. What is that something better? The full-blown new covenant. At the moment, it's the already not yet. We are experiencing part of it, but not all of it. These people died having not received what was promised because their eye went beyond what was seen into the unseen. Are you living this morning in such a way that you are making the unseen seen? And when people look at you, they see the real thing. This verse 40, verse 39 and 40 also, in a sense, does away with this idea that there are two peoples of God. Because both peoples, whether they are Jews or non-Jews who trust Christ as Messiah King, will experience a future inheritance. It's the same inheritance. The Old Covenant saints and the New Covenant saints have the same inheritance. You may have erected a whole theology on that because you say Christians of this day are promised heaven. Old Testament saints were never promised heaven. Well, yeah, it says that apart from us, they will not be made perfect because they were looking forward to the same thing, a future inheritance, a future with God, where they will ultimately be made perfect. Well, this morning, a couple of questions for you. Think about this. What is the common denominator between the name brands and the no name brands in God's economy, according to chapter 11? The section of the story gives one common denominator. If you loved maths, then you know what a common denominator is. When you do fractions, you have to find the common denominator so you can add the fractions or subtract them from each other. So, what's the common denominator between those who are named and were delivered and those unnamed who were not delivered? And then a second question. What is the end game of those who have gone before and those who come after? What's the end game? What is each looking to? They are looking to the same end. Remember, the story of the scripture starts out in a garden. Eden, the garden of God, the mountain of God. Ezekiel 28 talks about the mountain of God in Eden, where the gods reside. because that's where gods reside, the top of mountains. It's the ancient Near Eastern worldview. But the story ends in the book of Revelation, again, in a garden, the garden of God, the new Eden. So, what is the end game of those who have gone before and those who come after? We then see great synchrony and great similarity between those who have gone before us and those who will even come after us. Because the principle of walking with God or to walk with God is still the same. You are saved by grace through faith. You are kept by grace through faith. And faith is not a work. There's nothing you can ever do to score brownie points with God. Your best efforts are lepers' cloths. They are filthy rags. They are menstrual cloths, the book of Isaiah says. That's what our best efforts amount to. That's why the second person of the Trinity had to step out of eternity into time. The visible Yahweh stepped into time, lived as a man, died on a cross, rose again, so that you and I can have a new lease on life. So, how about that this morning? The challenge is singular. Will you trust God? That's the theme, incidentally, running through 66 chapters of Isaiah. Will you trust God? I trust that as you go with God this morning, your heart will be encouraged. There's only one thing required of you: trust Him. Have a good day.